Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network, and welcome to another deep dive.
Thanks for having me. It's a really important topic today.
It really is. So I want you, the listener, to just imagine something with me for a second. Imagine the absolute worst week of your entire life.
Right. Just the lowest point,
Exactly. You are running on maybe perhaps 3 hours of fragmented sleep.
if you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're very lucky. And it's that kind of sleep that doesn't even actually rest you, you know? It just
Ro-
it just pauses the nightmare for a few minutes.
Oh, absolutely. It's just interruption of the stress.
Right. So you're navigating this emotional landscape that feels completely alien. You're fielding endless phone calls, you're making impossible logistical decisions, and you're just trying to remember to breathe.
Yeah.
Now imagine taking all of that exhaustion, all of that raw grief, and sitting down at a computer at 2 in the morning.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The house is completely silent.
Mhm.
You stare at a stark white screen, a blinking cursor, and a fractured text margin that simply refuses to align.
That's brutal.
It is. You're trying to encapsulate the entire beautiful existence of someone you loved deeply into a folded piece of paper, and the software is just, it's fighting you every single step of the way.
It's a scenario that plays out in, thousands of homes every single night.
It's devastating.
It really is. It's this intersection of profound human loss and, well, deeply rigid digital formatting.
And it's a very specific kind of modern, quiet agony. So for today's deep dive, we are looking at a source document that tackles this exact agonizing scenario.
Right.
It's this brief, really highly targeted guide, and it's simply titled 10-Minute Funeral Program.pdf.
A very bold title.
Super bold. And the mission of our conversation today is to unpack a claim from that document that, honestly, it feels almost scandalous at first glance.
I can see why you'd say that. Yeah.
I mean, we're going to explore how a deeply emotional, traditionally hours-long, massively stress-inducing task creating a final memorial program can actually be beautifully, completely, and respectfully accomplished in just 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah. 10 minutes using ready-made templates from a platform called the Funeral Program site.
That 10-minute time frame is the provocateur here.
Totally.
It forces us to immediately question our assumptions about time, about effort, and how we actually honor the people we've lost.
It really does force that question. And for you listening, whether you're anywhere near this stage of life or thankfully completely insulated from it right now, this matters.
Absolutely, because eventually the logistics of loss come for everyone.
Right. You are going to be the one sitting at that desk at some point, tasked with making final arrangements under an impossible deadline.
Unfortunately, yes.
So our core question today is, how do you prevent the absolute logistical nightmare of fonts and margins and, layout geometry from completely swallowing your ability to actually grieve?
Or to put it another way, how do we stop confusing the friction of software with the depth of our devotion?
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Because the source document hits on a massive unspoken assumption right out of the gate. There is this really pervasive belief that creating a memorial program must inherently be a long, drawn-out, complicated process.
Like, it has to hurt to be meaningful.
Exactly. The guide explicitly addresses how families naturally expect to spend hours, sometimes days, wrestling with layouts and formatting, only to walk away feeling completely defeated.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to push back on that immediately.
Sure.
I think that expectation of struggle exists for a reason, right?
What do you mean?
Well, if you tell me I can create the final tribute to my grandfather or my spouse in the time it takes me to drink a cup of coffee, part of my brain just recoils.
It feels wrong.
It feels wrong. Does a 10-minute timeline imply a lack of care? I mean, to me, it almost sounds like serving instant coffee at a five-star dinner.
That's a strong analogy.
Right. Is it too fast to be respectful? Like, if I only spend 10 minutes on this document, am I really honoring their memory, or am I just looking for the exit?
What's fascinating here is that visceral recoil you're describing, that's exactly why this topic is so
Yeah.
important. We are heavily conditioned to believe in this concept of emotional sweat equity.
Emotional sweat equity. I like that.
We think that the sheer amount of time we suffer through a task is the exact metric by which our love is measured.
Right. Like, look how hard I worked on this. That means I loved them.
Exactly. But the source document is challenging us to separate the mechanics of graphic design from the pure emotion of the tribute.
Separating the mechanics from the emotion. Okay.
Think about the reality of those 3 hours spent fighting with a layout at 2 in the morning.
It's terrible.
Are you actually reminiscing during that time? Are you deeply connecting with the memory of your loved one while you do that?
No, no, I'm swearing at the monitor because I tried to move a photo like quarter of an inch to the left, and somehow the entire obituary jumped to page 4.
Precisely. You are engaged in a structural engineering problem, not an act of mourning.
Right. Oh, wow.
Struggling with paragraph alignment does not equal loving someone more.
It just means you don't know how to use the software.
Right. It only equals unnecessary exhaustion. What this guide is arguing is that by utilizing a professionally designed template, you are intentionally outsourcing the cold, unforgiving geometry of page layout.
Outsourcing the geometry.
Yes. You are doing that specifically to preserve your rapidly depleting emotional reserves for what actually matters.
Which is?
The curation of memories, the selection of the perfect photo, the careful reading of the words.
So it's less about taking a shortcut and more about refusing to misdirect your energy.
Exactly. It's energy management.
That is a really vital distinction for anyone dealing with the intense cognitive load of grief. Because, I mean, grief isn't just a feeling of sadness, right?
Not at all.
It's a physiological state. It is a dense brain fog.
It is acute cognitive overload. When a loss occurs, the people closest to the sender are thrust into a whirlwind of relentless decision-making.
Too many decisions.
You're interacting with funeral directors, managing complex family dynamics, dealing with legalities, coordinating travel schedules for out-of-town guests.
It's a full-time job.
The human brain simply is not designed to process that volume of logistical data while simultaneously processing a profound existential trauma.
And yet, society fully expects that person to suddenly transform into a skilled desktop publisher by midnight.
Right. It's an absurd expectation when you really look at it.
The text really emphasizes this contrast. It paints the picture of the traditional method staring at that blank digital document.
The worst thing to look at.
And a blank document is incredibly hostile when you're vulnerable.
It really is.
It demands that you invent structure out of nothing. It demands that you make 100 tiny, invisible decisions about spacing and typography before you can even begin to express your feelings.
A blank page is essentially an emotional vacuum.
An emotional vacuum.
Yeah. It offers no support, no boundaries, and no guidance. The fix, as outlined in the document, completely alters that starting environment.
How so?
By beginning with a ready-made template from the funeral program site, you are fundamentally changing the psychological starting line.
Okay, I'm tracking with you.
You aren't standing at the bottom of a mountain looking up at a blank slate. You are stepping into a room that has already been prepared for you.
Oh, I like that visual. So let's break down the architecture of that room.
Let's do it.
Because if we want to understand how these templates actually buy back those lost hours, and, more importantly, buy back that sanity, we really have to look at the mechanical structure the source describes.
Right.
The text deconstructs the anatomy of the template, starting right from the very first interaction.
The cover.
The cover.
The guide is very deliberate in how it sequences this. It notes that the template provides a fully designed layout with all essential sections already mapped out.
So no guessing what goes where.
Exactly. The cover, the order of service, the obituary, the photo areas, they're all established. But that initial interaction with the cover is critical.
Why is the cover so critical?
Because the text states that the very first few minutes are spent simply updating the cover information.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This is where the 10-minute claim starts to crystallize for me.
How so?
You aren't actually building a cover. You are simply replacing placeholder text.
That's right.
You type in the loved one's name. You type in their sunrise and sunset dates. And you drop in a primary photograph.
It's that simple.
That is a drastically different cognitive task than, designing a front page.
Consider the psychological impact of that single, rapid action.
Okay.
Within the first 2 or 3 minutes of sitting down, you see their face on the screen.
Wow. Yeah.
You see their name beautifully framed by a professional design. The document notes that this immediately transforms the generic file into something deeply personal.
It stops being a cold digital file.
Exactly.
It becomes them. It becomes a tangible artifact of their life almost instantly because the background, the ornate borders, the color framing, all of that is already locked in place.
You bypass the agonizing trial and error phase.
You don't have to try to make it look dignified. It already looks dignified. It just needed their identity to activate it.
That rapid transformation provides an immediate psychological win for the person sitting at the keyboard.
A win. And you need a win at that moment.
You desperately need a win. Instead of feeling defeated by a blank page, They feel a sense of accomplishment. They have created something beautiful in 3 minutes.
Right.
That momentum is crucial when you are exhausted.
Right.
It provides the energy required to move on to the heavier emotional lifting.
Which is the interior text.
Yes, the interior pages.
Right. Because a name and a photo on a cover is one thing, but the interior pages, the obituary, the eulogy, the order of service, that involves a massive amount of text. And dealing with text is usually where the digital wheels completely fall off the wagon.
Oh, without a doubt.
The source details how the templates handle this, stating that you simply copy and paste your written details into designated sections.
But the critical mechanism here, which the document explicitly highlights, is that these templates automatically maintain formatting.
Automatically maintain formatting.
Yes, this is where the unseen genius of a well-constructed template truly resides. It isn't just providing a suggestion of where text should go.
What is it doing then?
It is providing a rigid, protective framework.
Okay. Because anyone who has ever pasted text from, say, an email directly into a standard word processor knows the absolute terror of what usually happens.
It's never good.
Never. Suddenly the font changes to like 36-point Comic Sans. It turns bright red. The margins completely vanish and your document spans 7 pages.
It's digital chaos.
It is chaos. So you're suggesting these templates act like a fortress against that chaos.
They act as a structured container.
A container.
Yeah. In the realm of psychology and trauma counseling, there is a prominent concept called the need for containers.
I haven't heard of that. What is that?
A container is a safe, clearly defined environment where a person can express intense, overwhelming emotions without the fear of falling apart or losing control.
Wow.
The ritual of a funeral service itself is a physical and temporal container for grief.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. I never once considered a digital document as a psychological container,
Most people don't.
but it makes perfect sense. When you're writing an obituary, you are distilling a lifetime of memories, triumphs, and heartbreaks into a few paragraphs.
It's incredibly heavy.
You are pouring out an immense volume of raw feeling.
And if you are forced to pour that raw feeling into a chaotic, volatile, unformatted digital void, the experience just compounds your feeling of overwhelm.
Because the technology is failing to hold your emotion.
Precisely. But if you are pasting those words into a pre-formatted space that instantly catches the text, organizes it, applies a dignified font, and locks the margins in place,
The software is holding space for you.
it is effectively holding space for you. It provides absolute boundaries. It subconsciously signals, your memories are safe here, and they are being treated with respect.
The source guide explicitly states that this specific feature eliminates one of the biggest time-consuming parts of creating a program.
It does.
But what you're pointing out is that it eliminates one of the biggest emotion-consuming parts as well.
Exactly. It fundamentally changes your job description.
How so?
You shift from being a frustrated structural engineer trying to build load-bearing margins to simply being an author.
You just supply the narrative.
You just supply the narrative. The template handles the physics of the page.
It allows the user to remain in the emotional headspace of honoring the deceased, rather than being dragged down into the sterile headspace of software troubleshooting.
Exactly.
But, text, while frustrating, is fundamentally linear, right? It behaves somewhat predictably.
Usually, yes.
The true test of any layout, and honestly, the point where most amateurs completely surrender, is the introduction of visual elements.
The photos.
Yes, the photos. Let's look at how the source guide solves the photo problem, because this is where the real friction lies for 99% of people using a computer.
The guide is quite definitive on this point.
Mm.
It states that adding visual elements is exceptionally fast because the templates are built with image placeholders.
Image placeholders. Okay, because we have all lived the nightmare of trying to adjust an image in a standard document.
It's universal trauma.
It really is. You insert a photo of your grandmother, it appears massive, taking up the whole page.
Right.
You try to scale it down, and the text wraps around it in a bizarre, jagged pattern.
And then you try to move it.
Yes. You try to drag the photo a fraction of an inch to the right, and instantly your bulleted order of service scatters across 3 different pages. A random blank page is generated at the end of the file, and you want to throw your laptop through a closed window.
I think we all been exactly there.
It's the worst.
And the underlying logic of standard word processors is that they are text-first environments.
Text first. Okay.
Images are treated as disruptive objects floating within a stream of text. The text wrap feature is notoriously volatile because it's constantly trying to recalculate the flow of words around an unpredictable obstacle.
That makes a lot of sense.
But the guide explains that with the image placeholders used by the funeral program site, that volatile relationship is totally severed.
How does it sever it? The text says you just drop in your selected photos, and there's no need to resize or reposition because the proportions are locked.
Think of a placeholder not as a suggestion on a page, but as a rigid digital picture frame bolted to the wall.
Bolted to the wall. I like that.
The frame has absolute dimensions. It has a specific width, a specific height, and an aspect ratio. When you drag a photograph into that placeholder, you are not asking the software to accommodate the photo.
Okay.
The placeholder forces the photo to accommodate the frame. The image is automatically cropped and scaled to fit the predetermined boundary flawlessly.
So the photo doesn't dictate the layout dictates the photo. You don't have to painstakingly crop the image of your loved one to make sure it doesn't break the margin. You just hand the photo over, and the digital frame basically says, I have this perfectly handled.
That's right. The surrounding text doesn't even know the photo changed, because the boundaries of the placeholder never shifted. The physics of the page remain entirely undisturbed.
That's incredible.
And if we elevate this observation to look at the broader human experience, what we are witnessing here is the systematic eradication of decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue.
The guide explicitly highlights this relief. It notes, quote, another reason this process is so fast is that you're not making design decisions.
Right. It specifies that the fonts, colors, and layout have already been professionally chosen. And, while that might sound restrictive to a professional designer, to a grieving family, it sounds like absolute salvation.
Let's dwell on the neurology of decision fatigue for a moment, because it is central to why this 10-minute claim actually works.
Let's do it.
Cognitive science tells us that the human brain operates with a finite daily reserve of decision-making energy.
Only so much juice in the battery.
Exactly. Every single choice, no matter how trivial, what shoes to wear, which lane to drive in, what word to use in an email, draws from that exact same energy pool.
And when someone passes away, that pool is instantly drained.
Gone.
The sheer volume of massive existential decisions required in the first 48 hours is just staggering.
It's unbelievable.
Do we choose burial or cremation? Which funeral home do we trust? Who is going to write the eulogy? Which family members need to be notified first? How are we paying for this?
The cognitive load is crushing.
It really is.
So when that exhausted individual finally sits down to create the memorial program, their decision-making battery is at absolute zero.
They've got nothing left.
Asking them at that moment to evaluate the subtle emotional differences between a serif and a sans serif font, or to decide the optimal kerning for a headline, or to choose a color palette that conveys solemnity without being depressing, it borders on cruelty.
It's asking them to run a marathon immediately after finishing a decathlon.
Yes.
It is setting them up for failure.
But by trusting a template's professionally curated design architecture, the family is granted permission to stop deciding.
Permission to stop. That's huge.
The source emphasizes this. Instead of experimenting with different styles, you can trust the template to deliver a polished result.
So you are actively leaning on the accumulated expertise of a graphic designer so that you don't have to artificially manufacture that expertise yourself at midnight.
Exactly.
That is a massive paradigm shift. You're not sacrificing control. You are strategically delegating the busy work.
You're happily surrendering the burden of choice to someone who already solved the puzzle.
Okay, so let's walk through the timeline.
Sure.
The cover took 3 minutes. The text was pasted into its safe, pre-formatted container, instantly adopting the correct typography. The photos were dropped into their rigid placeholders, perfectly proportioned without breaking a single margin.
The heavy lifting is completely finished.
Completely. The guide indicates we're now approaching the finish line of this 10-minute process. But how do we ensure the final product, the actual piece of paper people will hold in their hands, reflects the profound care we want to convey?
This transitions us to the final stages detailed in the source document. The review and the production phases.
Final polish.
Right. The guide advises taking a dedicated, quiet moment to review the populated template. This involves checking for spelling errors, verifying that the dates of birth and passing are accurate, and, ensuring the overall flow is correct.
And I love what this implies for the user. Think about how your role has fundamentally evolved from the moment you sat down. You are no longer acting as the layout artist. You are no longer the typographer or the graphic designer. You have been promoted.
Promoted to what?
Your only real responsibility now is to act as the guardian of the truth.
The guardian of the truth. That is a beautiful and highly accurate way to frame it.
Because that's what it is, right?
Right.
Your sole job is to protect the facts of this person's life.
Yes.
You're just ensuring that their middle name is spelled exactly the way they preferred it. You are making sure the order of service accurately reflects the music that will actually be played.
Right.
You are fiercely protecting the historical record of their existence rather than fighting a war of attrition against a paragraph indent.
And your capacity to act as that guardian is significantly heightened precisely because you aren't fatigued by the design process.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
When your eyes aren't tired from staring at a crooked margin or a bizarrely stretched photograph, you are vastly more likely to catch a subtle typo in a surviving family member's name.
Because you actually have the mental clarity to see it.
Exactly. The guide points out that this brief, focused proofread ensures that the program reflects care and attention to detail without adding much time to the process.
Right.
But beyond factual accuracy, the source emphasizes another crucial psychological element of the final polish: visual consistency.
Visual consistency. It specifically states, quote, "Every page will have the same margins, fonts, and spacing, creating a cohesive and professional appearance."
Yes.
Now, we all know what an inconsistent document looks like, but why does it actually matter for a funeral program?
It matters deeply because of how the human brain processes visual information on a subconscious level.
Okay, unpack that.
Especially during times of emotional distress, we rely on heuristics or mental shortcuts to interpret our environment.
Right.
When we look at a document where the margins jump subtly from page 1 to page 2, or where the font sizes fluctuate without logical reason, our visual cortex registers that inconsistency as noise.
As noise.
It perceives it as chaotic, disorganized, or rushed.
Oh, I totally get that. We've all been handed a flyer for a local event where the creator used 9 different fonts and chaotic spacing because they thought it looked dynamic.
And it doesn't.
No, it literally just gives you a low-level migraine to read it.
Exactly. Even if the reader cannot articulate why the layout looks wrong, their nervous system feels the friction.
And at a funeral.
During a memorial service, the attendees are already in a state of elevated emotional friction.
Right.
Achieving absolute visual consistency, where the typography and layout fade entirely into the background, allowing the message and the memories to take center stage, is the goal.
You don't want people noticing the fonts.
Never.
Eh.
And it is incredibly difficult to achieve that invisible perfection manually under a tight deadline.
Almost impossible.
The template from the funeral program site guarantees that consistency mathematically.
Mathematically.
Yes. It ensures that the visual experience of engaging with the program is soothing, stable, and comforting, rather than jarring.
It removes all the static from the broadcast.
That's a great way to put it.
And then we reach the final hurdle. We have to take this pristine digital file and force it into the physical world.
Printing phase.
We have to print it. And for me, printing is always the final boss battle of any document creation.
It's where dreams go to die.
It really is. You hit print, and suddenly, a document that looked flawless on the screen is cutting off the bottom margin, scaling at 85%, and printing across 3 pages instead of 2.
It's infuriating.
It makes you want to cry, but the source document tackles this exact anxiety.
What does it say?
It states that printing is straightforward because the templates are designed with proper margins and sizing, so you can print immediately without additional adjustments.
It explicitly removes the technical friction from the very last step.
Which is such a relief.
This is a crucial detail because the physical production environment can vary wildly.
True.
A family might be printing 50 copies on a standard consumer inkjet printer in their home office at 3 in the morning. Alternatively, they might be emailing the file to a commercial print shop or a dedicated professional service.
And the document is claiming that the file is robust enough to handle either scenario without requiring the user to understand bleed lines, crop marks, or, printer schooling settings.
Correct. The file is inherently optimized.
Inherently optimized.
The margins are mathematically set to accommodate the non-printable borders of standard desktop printers while maintaining a professional aesthetic.
So no weird cutoff text at the bottom.
None. The guide notes that the result will look clean and consistent regardless of the output method. You hit print, and the machine simply produces what you see on the screen.
It's essentially a plug-and-play solution, but applied to something deeply profound.
Exactly.
And what truly expanded my perspective is that this polished, consistent look isn't artificial limited to just the folded program.
Oh, not all.
The source document reveals that this efficiency is scalable. We are no longer just talking about a single booklet. We are talking about engineering the entire visual landscape of the memorial experience. Let's dig into customization and coordination.
That's a really important next step,
Yeah.
because a very natural and common concern with anything marketed as fast or template-based is the fear of sterility.
Right.
There is an assumption that efficiency requires sacrificing personality, resulting in something rigid or generic.
That's always the fear with templates.
However, the source document explicitly addresses this tension, noting that customization is still possible, even with a fast process.
It suggests utilizing whatever time you have saved to add specific personal touches. It mentions integrating favorite quotes, meaningful scriptures, or additional photo collages if time permits.
So it's flexible.
Very. The framework doesn't lock you in a rigid box. It simply provides a beautifully constructed foundation, and you are entirely free to build upon it.
Right.
But here is where my skepticism flares up again.
Okay, let's hear it.
The text mentions the ability to coordinate matching designs for supplementary memorial items, things like prayer cards, bookmarks, and large display posters.
Yes, the coordination aspect.
If I am using a rapid template to coordinate all these disparate physical items, does it risk making the funeral look too corporate?
Expand on that. What does a corporate funeral look like to you?
Well, imagine walking into a memorial, and the welcome poster in the lobby perfectly matches the folded program on the pew, which perfectly matches the prayer card they hand you at the door, which perfectly matches the bookmark you take home.
Okay.
If it's all too perfectly branded, does it start to feel like a corporate marketing summit?
Yeah.
Does it strip the humanity out of the room by being too visually coordinated?
That is a highly perceptive question, and it really cuts to the core of the role of aesthetics in the mourning process.
Because you want it to feel personal, right?
Exactly. To answer it, we have to counter that fear of corporate branding with what the text actually asserts, and look at the psychological intent behind the design.
Okay, let's look at the intent.
The guide states that this level of customization ensures the program remains meaningful while still being efficient.
Meaningful while efficient.
Furthermore, regarding the matching supplementary items, it notes that this provides the entire service with a unified look. The critical distinction we need to make here is the profound difference between something being corporate and something being cohesive.
Okay, draw that line for me. What separates branding from cohesion in the context of grief?
Well, corporate branding is explicitly designed to manipulate behavior.
True.
It is engineered to sell a product, to project sterile authority, and to dominate attention.
It wants something from you.
Precisely. A cohesive memorial environment, on the other hand, is meticulously designed to comfort and support.
Comfort and support.
When mourners walk through the doors of a funeral home, a church, or a community hall, they are entering a space in a state of emotional disorientation.
They're a mess.
Their world has just been shattered. They are unmoored.
They're looking for something solid to hold on to.
Exactly. Visual consistency acts as an anchor.
And they
When a mourner sees a beautiful, recurring visual motif, perhaps a specific watercolor floral pattern or a serene landscape on a large welcome poster,
Yeah.
and then they sit down and hold a beautifully weighted program featuring that exact same comforting design.
Right.
And later they slip a matching prayer card into their pocket.
Yeah.
That visual echo provides a subtle, subconscious sense of order.
It tells them they're safe.
It provides calm in a moment of absolute chaos.
Oh, I see. It has absolutely nothing to do with branding the deceased person's identity. It is entirely about stabilizing the attendees.
It creates a seamless visual environment. It communicates to the mourners, without using a single word, that this physical space has been prepared for them with deep, deliberate intention and immense care.
Wow.
It doesn't look like a corporate board meeting. It looks and feels like a sanctuary.
Sanctuary.
And the ultimate value proposition of what the funeral program site templates offer is the fact that a grieving family was able to create that beautiful, unified, comforting sanctuary quickly without destroying their own fragile mental health in the process.
That makes profound sense. You are utilizing design efficiency to construct an environment of pure care.
Exactly.
And if you can construct that environment in 10 minutes of focused, meaningful work rather than 10 hours of agonizing software battles, it fundamentally changes the experience of the survivor.
Completely.
As we zoom out and look at the entire journey we've mapped today, the mechanics detailed in this brief document completely rewrite the rules of funeral preparation.
They absolutely do. We've traced the trajectory from the initial overwhelming dread that most families anticipate to a completely transformed reality.
It's a night and day difference.
We've moved from the hostility of the blank screen to the safety of the template.
Let's distill the core revelation here. What we are really taking away from this guide is a profound message of relief.
Relief is the perfect word.
The traditional expectation that you must endure a stressful multi-hour struggle with volatile software, fighting with layout glitches, and agonizing over typography choices during the single most devastating week of your life is a fallacy.
It's totally unnecessary.
It can be completely bypassed. It can be transformed into a polished, manageable 10-minute task simply by trusting the ready-made architecture provided by the funeral program site.
You are given permission to bypass the mechanics so you can focus entirely on the meaning.
You are allowed to step down from the frustrating role of amateur graphic designer and step fully into the vital role of the curator of memories.
Exactly. You let the digital framework hold the heavy structure so that you can safely and completely pour your emotions into the tribute.
And for you listening right now, even if you are nowhere near planning a memorial, and I sincerely hope that you are not, just possessing the knowledge that this exists is an incredibly powerful tool.
It really is.
Knowing that there are simple, deeply reliable systems specifically designed to remove technical complexity during life's most vulnerable moments is vital.
Because the day will come.
It means that when that inevitable day arrives and you find yourself sitting at that quiet computer late at night, you have a distinct advantage.
You don't have to start from zero.
You have a direct pathway to producing something heartfelt, beautiful, perfectly consistent, and deeply respectful, quickly and confidently. You do not have to artificially suffer through the logistics of software to prove the depth of your love.
It is the ultimate application of efficiency. Utilizing streamlined mechanics not to work harder, but to fiercely preserve our humanity when we are at our most fragile.
That is beautifully said.
Which leads me to a thought that extends far beyond the realm of memorial programs.
Oh, I love where this is going. What are you thinking?
Well, we have spent this time examining how removing the friction of design in this one highly specific area allows us to focus entirely on the emotional core of the task.
Right.
So if relying on a pre-made template for a deeply personal, highly emotional funeral program actually increases our capacity to focus on what truly matters,
Yeah.
I wonder in what other emotionally taxing high-stakes areas of our lives are we making things unnecessarily difficult for ourselves, simply because we stubbornly insist on building everything from scratch?
Wow. That is a hauntingly brilliant question to leave on.
It's something to think about.
We really do cling so tightly to that illusion of sweat equity, to the nobility of the struggle in so many facets of our daily lives.
We think the hard way is the only way.
Perhaps it's time we actively seek out the templates for the rest of our hard moments, too. Until next time, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.